So first couple of things, generally about wood. The wood you're probably going to be mostly 1x8 pine. Not as many knots as some stuff. It's got a relatively finished surface to it, but it's solid wood. You can see the grain. And usually you want the grain running with the length of the wood. If most stock wood you buy, like a 2x4 or 2x2, will have the grain running with the length of it for strength. If it ran this way, it'd be very weak. So if you're cutting pieces out, don't cut thin strips like that with the grain going this way, because that'll be very easy to break. If it breaks, we'll glue it back together again and we'll work it out. Another type of wood you may have come across is plywood with layers that have been glued together. And the grains are going different ways then. So that makes it stronger to keep it, like for big panels. But with the glue in it and everything, with the way we were using it, it would end up being, it's a lot of wear and tear because the glue is more aggressive on the sanding and more wears out and clogs up. Sand, abrasive papers and abrasive belts, as well as dulls blades quicker. Anyway, one of the tools you'll come across is, I'm just going to use a regular kind of handsaw here. Mostly it's kind of a combination, but they used to have more like rip and crosscut having finer teeth, finer and fewer smaller teeth, rip saws having bigger teeth. Most of the times, like this would be definitely a finer type 2 saw, but a lot of times you can pretty much kind of combination use these blades. This is more for a little bit more heavier tooth for rip, but we can use it for crosscut anyway. So I'm gonna put this in a vise. You can kind of sometimes hand hold things when you're cutting. Also, there's knots, and you want to be careful. You know, if you have to hit a knot, it's going to be a little harder there. So if you can avoid them. Sometimes a knot can, if you cut up the wood, it can be in such a place where the piece of wood comes apart. But anyway, I'm going to use this guy. And actually, there's sort of an interesting thing here. I don't know if it's that darned interesting. Like you could use a square, a combo square. So if I wanted to get a 90, I can use that and mark it and measure it. But also have like a 45 here, so I could do that. But I can do a similar thing if you're just out in the field. They make these so like it's got a 90 and a 45 there, so I could use that to get my 45 and that edge to get my 90. Now that I did all that, just going to go ahead and cut. Now when you start, one thing you want to not do, a lot of things, don't cut yourself. Make sure you have your safety glasses on. Make sure you keep your hands away from the blade. This doesn't have any power on it, but if your hand was close, here, we'll do it like this. Your hand was right there near the blade, and you skipped and came down and kept going, you can take a pretty big chunk out of your fingers. So keep your hands away. And I kind of drag back to get it started, kind of tear a little bit, but it's cutting on the push. If you look at those teeth, it's kind of hard to see in the video, they're pointed that way. So I want to get it gliding back and forth. And if I was trying to cut straight, I'd also draw a line there, but let's just go for it. I want to get it gliding back and forth. All right. If I push down really hard here, it's not going to go anywhere. So I kind of, there we go. A little splintery. Like that. So that's just your regular kind of hand saw, general purpose. It's a little bit finer. Sometimes if you're cleaning wooden dowels, if you use wooden dowels in the joinery, you can use this to clean that up. This has a knife, it's a flush kind of saw, so I can be flush against the surface there. Oh, but if you gotta go that way, what you can do is release the pressure, push in on that, and flip this around. Do be careful of the blade teeth. There's always gloves you can wear. And now it cuts the other way. These teeth don't have, they're kind of cut both ways. Now another, more of a crosscut saw with a hard back, kind of reinforced back there to keep it straight, and much finer teeth is good for cross cutting. And actually, that's sort of designed to work with a miter box. This is a little miter box. We'll be looking at the motorized miter box as well. It has a lip on this side, right here, and that's to go against the table because you're cutting on the push and sliding along. It can also be screwed down. It's a relatively cheap one. But you get your 90 degrees, 45s, even a beveled angle at 45. So I can put my piece of wood in here, and generally I put it towards the front. Set it in there like that. That you can see easier. So I'm using my hand to kind of clamp it towards this front piece. And I slip off the... Try to be more careful. Right. So I cut that, and it keeps it relatively straight. It's okay. Do stop before you cut through the plastic of the that. Another type of saw we have, I'm going to use this guy here, is a coping saw. Now a lot of times I clamp this down flat and work this way, but I think for the video, maybe this would work better. So this can loosen this handle and press these together and remove this. You can drill a hole and put it through and cut a hole on the inside. We also have the jigsaw, which works really well for that. But this is very fine teeth, very thin this way, so we can do, whereas these are designed for cutting straight. Same thing with the power tools. The circular saw type machines are for cutting straight cuts. Even if they're at angles, they're straight. The bandsaw and the jigsaw with the thinner blades are for cutting curved cuts. So I want to get this one started. And then I can turn fairly easily. Now say I wanted to come back and I can't turn this anymore. I can loosen this a little bit and turn this. Don't twist the blade back this way. So now the blade teeth, tighten it again. Oops. So I can do delicate little curved cuts and drop them on the floor and lose them. But again, let me tighten that up. When you're cutting, you're getting it to, the movement, you're getting it to slide back and forth. You don't want to push that way so hard, because especially with this, you'll start to bend this blade. And you don't want to bend it. That's the coping saw. There's a similar type of slightly different saw called a fret saw. It gets complicated.